If you're anything like me, first impressions are everything. Whether we're talking about people, music, video games, TV shows, movies, you name it. You only have a certain amount of time to catch your audience's attention before you lose them. I'll admit that I'm picky and that I'm not very patient, but when I find a good show, I hold on to it. Now, in regard to my particular taste in TV shows, I think I've finally come to terms with the type of shows that I like. Romance isn't bad, neither is a good comedy nor mystery. But you know what I really like to find in a show? Violence. Now, not just your petty fights or bickering, I'm talking... yeah, violence. I'll be real, I had no idea what I was in for when coming into Invincible. Just by looking at the poster, you'd think this is your everyday Teen Titans or Justice League. But then you have to remember who's actually in charge of the production for this show. To me, Amazon originals are on the same level of maturity as Netflix originals. And that should tell you a lot about what to expect for Invincible. First off, disclaimer for the parents with young children who like superhero shows and movies. This might not be the best show for them. It is gruesome. The animation might look inviting at first, but it gets gory and it does not pull punches, which I'll show you a little bit later when I get into episode 1. There are only 5 episodes out right now and I've already seen people ripped in half, heads crushed by someone's bare hands, scores of civilians massacred, and the list goes on. So keeping that in mind, let's move forward into the actual show itself. Since the show is so new, I'm only going to do a full breakdown of episode 1, and hopefully depending on what you hear, you'll be able to determine whether or not you want to give the show a chance. But straight off the bat, I'll tell you what I think of Invincible. This show is good. At first glance, you might think of this show as an animated version of The Boys, but you'll quickly see that Invincible has a much different view of the superhero life. And by the way, if you haven't seen The Boys, then you are in for a wild ride. Also, if you're wanting to get easily attached to characters, then this show might have you on edge for the whole season. So the show follows a teenager named Mark Grayson who is late getting his powers. His dad, Nolan Grayson, is from a planet called Viltrum, a planet of people with superhuman speed, strength, and they can even fly. His mom, Debbie Grayson, on the other hand, is 100% human with no powers. Being such a late bloomer, both of Mark's parents thought that he'd never get them. However, that does end up happening. Now Mark has to figure out the type of hero that he wants to be. There's a lot going for this show, but where it really shines is during its action sequences and its down-to-earth character interactions. When our characters aren't fighting to protect their city or the Earth, the story focuses on Mark's life and his attempt at trying to balance his social life and school life with his superhero-dom. Sure, this is the basic formula for most superhero shows, but how you tackle it makes all the difference. The writing for Invincible is very well done. Even the villains we meet are actually likable in their own way and have their own personalities and way of thinking. I guess the best way to put it is that this show has practical villains, rather than your average cliche 2D villains with no defining characteristics. I've always liked the type of villains who don't take themselves too seriously, leaving room to show their more human side, even though some aren't technically human. So I'll actually end the non-spoiler segment with this. If you are looking for a good adult animated TV show with very interesting characters, great action, and good story potential, this just might be the show for you. Now, let's dive into spoiler territory and go deep into the events of episode 1. We start off inside the White House with 2 security guards manning the front gate, or at least that's their job. The 2 security guards are in the middle of a conversation about a new combat training that they're meant to be a part of, to help fend off people with superpowers.
I'm supposed to learn to tuck and roll away from a guy who can shoot lasers from his eyes, or control minds, or kick a goddamn school bus to the moon?
It's the job.
I think this is the first superhero-centric show where everyday people point out the flaws in relying on non-superpowered people to fend off those with superpowers. He's got a point though. Realistically, what can an average person do in these situations? Well, lucky for us, we're about to find out. Everything around them begins to shake, and as the ground cracks and explodes from under them, out comes 2 massive blue guys known as the Mahler twins. The reason why they're here is to send a clear message to the White House.
This was always the plan. The president is targeting us, so we shatter the illusion of his safety. It's not enough for us to kill him, it has to be a spectacle.
And as if them just standing there having a casual conversation while bullets rain down on them wasn't enough, Steve, the security guard that we were introduced to earlier, thinks that it's a good idea to shoot one of them in the back of the head. This of course aggravates one of the twins, and he focuses his attention on Steve, who then does fire another shot at him, but this time into his eye, which actually ends up doing damage. This makes him even angrier, and just before he's able to kill him, the Guardians of the Globe drop in. To note, there are 7 members of the Guardians of the Globe: War Woman, Immortal, Green Ghost, Martian Man, Dark Wing, Red Rush, and Aquarius. And if you haven't realized, these are all plays on the Justice League. Red Rush and Green Ghost focus on evacuating the nearby civilians while the rest take care of the twins. Overall, the Guardians of the Globe seem to be holding their own against them just fine. There is one moment with Dark Wing where he's almost crushed by a tank trying to save a civilian, but before that happens, he's saved by another hero named Omni-Man. But back at the White House, Immortal is going toe-to-toe with one of the Mahler twins, while simultaneously saving some of the nearby soldiers by throwing them high in the air. This is to keep them out of the twins' reach. It was an interesting decision seeing how occupied he was, but luckily, Omni-Man makes it back in time to catch them all and fly them to safety. Overall, the Guardians seem like a good team who are all in sync and know how to play off each other's strengths. After the Guardians capture the Mahler twins, we then transition to our main character, Mark Grayson, who's reading a comic book called Seance Dog while he's on the toilet.
Kid, there's nothing going on down there I haven't seen before.
Just get out!
We then go to the 2 downstairs with Mark watching the news. He tells his mom that it looks like Omni-Man, his dad, is saving the White House with the Guardians of the Globe. This is a good way to show how common this is. Neither Mark nor his mom seem surprised about what's going on.
Oh, Mahler twins. Looks like we won't be getting breakfast together this morning. Bummer.
Once Omni-Man arrives home, he pretty much acts like nothing ever happened. This family overall seems normal aside from the fact that the dad is a superhero. Anyway, as Mark goes up to finish getting ready for school, his parents casually talk about going to Paris or maybe Berlin to get breakfast at a cafe called Best Worst. Mark gets a little down that he can't go with them, but Nolan says that he'll be able to go on his own once his powers kick in. If his powers kick in. So there's our early predicament. Despite his dad's powers, Mark is still powerless.
Salt on the wound, Dad.
They've got to be due any day now, son. You'll see.
Don't get his hopes up.
As Mark leaves through the front door, we see his parents fly off to Berlin for their breakfast date. As a last ditch effort, Mark begins to continuously jump as high as he can in hopes that he'll achieve flight. However, the only thing he gets out of it are just some odd looks from a bypassing mailman. We then cut to Mark at school with his best friend William, who is criticizing the Guardians of the Globe for letting the Mahler twins get so close to killing the president, where Mark defends them and says that they didn't even get inside the building and that Omni-Man was there to help too. William notes how much of an Omni-maniac he is, hinting to us, the audience, that even his best friend doesn't know Omni-Man is his dad. William then tries to make plans with Mark where Mark has to decline since he has a job. As for why he has a job, it's so he can afford to keep up with his comic book obsession. The conversation is then cut short when they see a jock named Todd harassing a girl named Amber, trying to get her to go out with him. Mark then tries to intervene but ends up getting beat up until Amber jumps in and kicks Todd in the nuts. She then thanks Mark, then goes to class. We then jump to later in the evening at Bergamot while Mark is taking out the trash. Yup. He's finally gotten his powers. Mark then excitedly heads home to tell his parents that his powers have finally come. His dad doesn't seem very enthused by this, but with a nudge from Debbie, she changes his attitude and he offers to help Mark train. Later that night, Mark lays restless in bed and thinks back on the conversation he had with his dad when he was younger. This is when Nolan explains to him his origin and how he came from a planet called Viltrum millions of miles away.
I volunteered to relocate to Earth and be its sole protector. That's when I met your mother.
He then goes on to say that they then eventually had him and that he's half Viltrumite. As for how things could change for him when he gets older, this means that he'll one day develop superpowers, including things like super speed, super strength, and even the ability to fly.
I'm gonna be able to fly?
Yes, son. You're gonna be able to fly.
I'm gonna be able to fly.
All these thoughts cause Mark to climb onto the roof from his window and attempt to fly. Before he's fully able to psych himself out from attempting it, he finally takes his leap of faith and sees that he can truly fly now. Understandably, he's not able to control it all the way, and can't keep his balance. Also, at the same time, he's getting higher and higher. So high that he almost collides with a commercial airplane and floats into space. But before he can, he passes out due to the lack of oxygen and plummets back towards the earth. Don't worry, he's fine. The following morning, we see him exhausted as he's woken up by his 6 a.m. alarm for his flying lessons with his dad. Let's see how this goes.
It's kind of like how you walk and you don't think about balancing anymore. But when you were a baby, you did.
I like the analogy Nolan uses to help Mark understand the fundamentals of flight. Sure, it's probably easier said than done, but the lengths he's going to make sure that he understands is definitely admirable. Coming into this show, I thought this was going to be one of those neglectful father type shows where the dad is so busy being a superhero that he has no time for his family, but it feels like he's balancing both sides of his life fine so far. But back to the scene, the two go over basic flight and the difficulty of relaxing enough to land, where, as we see, he has a little bit of trouble.
Stop. Just stop. Okay, I guess that still counts as a landing.
Oh my god. This is like the perfect comparison to teens learning how to drive for the first time. When your mind is just so overwhelmed that the accelerator feels the same as the brakes. After Mark's crash landing, Nolan takes this opportunity to switch gears and begin combat training. Well, for now, just how to punch effectively. Once he sees that Mark is getting the hang of it a little bit, he decides that now is the perfect time to give him a live demonstration.
Good. But try it a little more like this.
Like what?
Oof, tough love. Nolan tries to explain that in his line of work, being a superhero, his opponent won't hold their punches, so he'll need to be prepared for anything. The two finally return home and Mark goes straight to his room. Debbie asks how it went and Nolan is honest, saying that he pushed him hard. And when Debbie asks if he thinks he pushed Mark a little too hard, we get a sudden mood shift from Nolan.
Are you questioning me?
What the hell has gotten into you?
I wasn't prepared for this. It changes things. Maybe our lives would be better if he hadn't gotten them at all.
You know, from a worried parent's perspective, I get where he's coming from. Maybe there's a deeper reason as to why he didn't want this day to come, but from a practical standpoint, life is going to get a whole lot more dangerous for him, especially if he intends to put himself on the front lines like his dad and the Guardians of the Globe are.
Jeez, man, you still sore from Todd's thrashing?
We then cut to Mark at school walking down the hall with William, who asks what's wrong. Unsurprisingly, Mark says that nothing is wrong, and then immediately after, Todd begins to start another fight with Mark.
Todd, please. Just don't.
Don't? Don't what?
This is where I got a little nervous. Last time Mark didn't have his powers. However, he's fully juiced up this time. If he really wanted to, he could absolutely annihilate Todd. But instead, he just tells Todd to keep hitting him, proving to him now that his punches aren't even doing the least bit of damage. And once Todd realizes this, he calls Mark a freak, then scurries away.
Dude, what is up with you?
I need something to punch. Gunfire. Where the gunfire go?
After school, Mark puts his abilities and what he's learned so far to the test and tries to stop a robbery. All things considered, he does okay, but as his father knows, he caused a lot of unnecessary damage. After the critique, Mark tells Nolan to hit him and that the only reason why he reacted the way he did the first time Nolan punched him was because he caught him off guard. Nolan declines and this frustrates Mark even more. In his mind, his dad's doubts all stem from the idea that Nolan thinks that he's weak. Honestly, compared to Nolan, it's safe to assume that everyone is weak. You'll get more of a feeling of what I mean at the end of the episode and throughout this season. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. After Mark admits that he wants to be just like him, they both hug and Nolan ensures that he will be. After they embrace, he tells Mark to follow him where they go to his costume designer Art Rosenbaum. Turns out he's the one actually responsible for most of the superheroes' costumes. Before he's able to actually work on Mark's costume, he asks if he's thought about a name or anything yet to give him something to work with. Mark says that he hasn't come up with anything yet, and Art tells him to think about it and to get back to him once he has something in mind. The following night, Debbie's looking around the house for Mark, who's nowhere to be seen. She then hears a loud bang coming from her backyard. As she makes it outside, something falls out of the sky and it's revealed that it's Mark practicing his landing. Annoyed that he's practicing in the middle of the night when they both have to be up early for work and school tomorrow, she tells him to go to bed, where he responds,
Make me.
Does that make you feel strong? To know I can't physically make you do something? Is that what you need?
I get that he's stressed, but nah, you don't take shit out on mama. So after Mark simmers down, they both sit outside and talk about how things used to be. When it used to be just Debbie and Mark while the superhero dad was out saving the world.
It's okay, sweetheart. I get it.
You have to move away from the normal life with me and get used to being something more.
I do love how understanding she's being. Things are changing fast from how they used to be, but the way she doesn't want to weigh him down and keep him from being like his father is probably the most difficult yet supportive thing that she could have done here. Not only is her husband risking his life every day to make sure the world is safe, but now her son will be too. Think about what Nolan said to Debbie earlier about how Mark getting his powers changes things, and how he sort of wishes that Mark hadn't got him at all definitely makes more sense now. The villains that we've seen thus far are by no means weak villains. I mean, the first villains that we saw had bodies durable enough to deflect bullets and missiles, and the strength to casually throw tanks. Considering that this is the first episode, we're bound to see even more villains and more serious threats as the show progresses. Mark then asks his mom how he's supposed to live up to his dad the way he is now. Debbie then replies that he doesn't have to be the best Omni-Man, but just the greatest version of himself.
Thank you. I love my boring, powerless, everyday run-of-the-mill mom.
And I love my asshole son.
The next day, Mark and Nolan are back in the sky, but this time casually throwing a baseball around the earth for the other to catch.
Were you nervous?
A little.
Being a superhero is no different.
This scene is just awesome. Aside from the good advice Nolan gives Mark, I love the casual father-son talk while they're effortlessly throwing a ball around the earth. But back to the conversation.
Kids your age think they're invincible, and it holds them back, makes them careless. You actually are invincible.
And this right here gives Mark the inspiration he needs to go back to Art the costume maker. After that, we cut to him actually wearing his suit, and it actually looks pretty good. As far as his personal progress is concerned, Mark's flying has gotten a lot better. But as he's breaking into his new suit, something happens.
Crap.
Looks like there's a little disturbance during the debut of his new image. So the person responsible for the massive laser shot through the tower goes by the name Kill Cannon, who just so happens to have a laser cannon for an arm. The cops clearly biting off more than they can chew here are desperately taking cover until Mark shows up. Though he's doing a considerable amount of damage to the buildings, he definitely does seem more confident and more in control of his powers. Overall, it's clear that he's improved.
Might as well give up. I'm...
Though the credits are rolling, don't think we're done with the episode just yet. Honestly, with what we're about to see, it feels like we're just getting started. We then move to a little picnic date with one of the Guardians of the Globe who goes by Red Rush, his real name being Yosef. He's talking to his lover Olga, who is telling him to try and be nicer to Aquarius. Red Rush responds by saying that he has a whole ocean of friends who could be nice to him. But before he can continue on, he senses a disturbance and deals with it in mere seconds. The only reason Olga notices in the first place that he left is because he forgot to change out of his suit.
Oh, crap.
How is this going to work if I can't hold your interest through one conversation?
Hold my interest? Olga, please. You can't see things how I do. My perception is just as fast as I am. The briefest conversation with anyone seems like hours to me. It's agony.
Harsh words to hear if you're the lady, but remember that line. We're gonna talk about that later. Yosef tries to backtrack on what he said earlier and says that but with her it's a gift and that he hangs onto every word. But before they can get back to their date, his wife starts to beep indicating that he's been summoned to the Guardians of the Globe headquarters. Knowing that he can't ignore it, Olga lets him go. Next we see Immortal one-on-one with the villain whose intentions are to blow up the whole city, along with himself, by detonating plutonium aligned in his suit. But before he can finish going into more detail about his motive, Immortal gets a little impatient.
I've lined my suit with plutonium! When in doubt, throw them into space.
A good and efficient motto. Immortal then gets the same signal as Red Rush and flies to the Guardians HQ. In the ocean, Aquarius is shown bored out of his mind until he gets the distress call and quickly swims to the surface. And in a more interesting environment, we see that War Woman, aka Holly, is the head of a major tech company. Connie, her advisor, I think, tries to get her on board with rolling out a piece of tech called Havenstorm 4.0 as their third quarter rollout, so their market share has a chance of rising by 10%. However, Holly isn't interested.
I'm not worried about the shareholders' year. I want a spectacular year for the world.
Come on!
Next is Martian Man testing his limits with expanding as far as he can with an orphan girl he befriended.
Oh man, take me with you. Come on, I can help.
We see that even though Nikki is young, she knows what that signal means for him. She tries to tell him to take her with him, but he declines, saying that it's too dangerous for human children to tag along.
Oh, you're doing so good. That's it. Oh, yes, like that, like that.
After that, we get another surprising look at a normal life for Green Ghost. At first I thought it was going to be the model because she was in all green, but instead it's the photographer. Once her bracelet begins to go off, she immediately wraps up the photo shoot. She's then shown swallowing an emerald jewel looking thing and flying off into the HQ. And lastly, we have Darkwing, who is actively tracking down 2 burglars. He's able to subdue them with electromagnetic cuffs and six them to a massive storage tank. Before he's able to get any information out of them about their boss, he's called to the HQ.
I'll check back with you tomorrow.
Did he just say tomorrow?
Winged.
Now that everyone is at the HQ, Immorta asks Darkwing why he summoned them there. Confused, he says,
Me?
So none of us signaled the alert.
Oh God, what's going on?
Yeah. It was during this part that I thought that maybe this was some kind of training exercise. We did see how serious he was with his son when training him. However, things get serious quick. Red Rush is acting as the main defense against Omni-Man, using his speed to move his team out of harm's way. However, he tries to go on the offensive where that proves to be a dire mistake. So, just in case you didn't see my warning earlier, I'm just gonna say it now. It's gonna get graphic. So if you can't handle intense violence, skip ahead about 3 or 4 minutes. Alright, let's continue. So this is where I completely threw away my prediction of this being an intense training exercise. Omni-Man is genuinely trying to kill all of them. This scene made me feel so bad for Yosef. Remember how he explained to Olga that the briefest moments feels like hours to him? Now imagine how long this felt for him. His punches of absolute desperation while his hands are completely shattered, doing everything he can to fight Omni-Man off. Jeez. Also, the fact that the suspenseful music ends once he dies, leaving nothing but silence and the sound of them trading blows with Omni-Man, really shows how hopeless their situation is. Moving on with this gruesome ass scene, Martian Man tries to be their next line of defense and wraps himself around Omni-Man.
Why have you done this?
I've literally been asking the same thing throughout this entire fight. Why, Nolan? I was rooting for you. Before he can land the finishing blow on War Woman, Darkwing steps in but is immediately put down by being slammed onto the ground and thrown at Green Ghost. So she'd have to face to catch Darkwing. During that exact moment, Omni-Man's going to use that to his advantage, which he successfully does. While he's occupied, Aquarius tries to blast Omni-Man, but he uses Green Ghost's body to shield himself.
Someone must be controlling him. He would never do this.
I get where Immortal is coming from, but honestly, what are the chances? Do you remember the story Omni-Man told Mark during that flashback of them on top of the roof of the house? He tells Mark that his people set out across the galaxy to help lesser developed worlds. He then states that he volunteered to go to Earth to be its sole protector. You hear that? Sole protector. Maybe he wants literally just that, and the Guardians were in the way. But it is important to note that this is all just speculation. I could very well be wrong. Oh god, the people who read the comics are probably laughing at me right now, but that's my working theory. Maybe I am wrong and he really is being controlled like Immortal says. But back to the scene, War Woman is the first to regain and gets another big hit on Omni-Man. He then punches her across the room, causing her to drop her weapon. Omni-Man then catches it in midair and uses it to smash Aquarius' head in. Blinded with rage, Martian Man charges back in and wraps himself around Omni-Man once again. This time Omni-Man is targeting what I assume to be Martian Man's heart moving around. However, at the same time, Immortal and War Woman are continuously punching him. Even so, he does end up getting a hold of Martian Man's vital spot and ripping it out. Not wasting any time finally being free from Martian Man's hold, he punches a hole through Immortal, then War Woman charges back in. He then grabs her head and snaps her neck. Now the last one still alive is Immortal, who asks Omni-Man once again,
Why? Why?
This was an insane turn of events. I thought the Guardians of the Globe were going to be a huge part of the show, but they were completely dismantled. This is probably the biggest blow in any superhero show that I've watched. Yes, even The Boys. And on that comparison, though I understand where people are coming from, the Guardians of the Globe versus the Seven are night and day to me. Unlike the Seven and the Boys, the Guardians of the Globe genuinely seemed to care about protecting the general public. It wasn't about their image or fame or money. They loved what they did, which makes that ending scene just so painful to watch. Seeing people wanting to do good being taken down for seemingly no reason, it was definitely a wake-up call to the audience, telling us there's a lot more to this story than what we're used to. Overall, I'm insanely excited to see where the show goes. And I also hope that after hearing what goes down in episode 1 of Invincible, you'll join in on what has the potential to be a really good show. But with that, I'll end the video here. So thanks for watching, and I will see you